and thanks for joining today. Obviously, the goal, as Gary mentioned already, is for us to really focus on Araknis and OvrC. Really, just kind of talking about, um, how those have come together, even more so in the last, 6 months, if you will, and how we're really trying to kind of flip the script and give you guys a great solution for networking that can also be managed in the cloud. At the same time, that's a big piece of what we're going to be going over there. So kind of the agenda of how we're going to go through today. The first thing I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is other training opportunities that you guys have outside of things like this. We've been spending a lot of time from my team working on these things. And so I want to make sure that I spend a little bit of time discussing those opportunities and what you guys have there with our new PCNA course. And then we're going to introduce just a quick overview as a refresher, what the offerings are from the Araknis lineup of products today. And then the biggest thing is I want to talk about our new SSID management solution and how you guys can properly utilize that to deploy networks in the most efficient way possible. So real quick, before we get rolling, as Gary was kind of mentioning before, some of you guys may have joined, there's so much stuff we can talk about. So to give you an example, I've done a training similar to this. That was a day and a half. It was essentially it was about 12 to 14 hours of content. And that's how much content there is in networking. It could be a week-long class that we could do on this. And so I want to make sure that today I do have some things that I plan to go over, but I want to make sure that we also answer the questions that are relevant to you guys. So please use that question and answer feature there inside of Zoom. Just hit the little Q&A icon down there in the bottom of your screen. If you're on a tablet phone, hit your little menu option and bring that up. And you will have the ability to ask questions, and I will do my best to answer them. I probably won't be able to answer every single one, but I'm going to do my best. I think we had about 40 questions, 50 questions last session. We got a good chunk of those through. But the reason I want you guys to ask questions is that drives the conversation. It allows me to make sure that the content we talk about is relevant to you guys, right? I do my best to get out in the field as much as possible. Obviously, in the last year, I have not been doing that as much as I would like, but I learn from you guys just as much as you learn from me. And so I always encourage as many questions you guys want to ask. Let's ask away, and we'll answer them the best way we can. So for those that don't know who I am, my name is Derek Webb. I am one of the technical trainers, instructors, educators at SnapAV. I've been with SnapAV now for about 8.5 years. I started on the tech support team 8 years ago, answering phone calls, talking to dealers, supporting you guys through and through. And I was able to grow that into a training role about 3 years ago. And so for the last really 2.5, 3 years, one of my main focuses has been out training all of our partners and dealers at SnapAV Pro Store. So AllNet, MRI, Volutone, Custom Plus. I've been to every single one of those locations at least one time, except for a few of our new locations that we just opened here in the last year, like Scottsdale and Charlotte. So that's this is what I've been doing for the past 2.5, 3 years, guys. And I love doing it. I love interacting with you guys. Looking forward to the chance when we get to do this again in person. But our team is responsible for everything education. That is product manuals. That is these webinars you're sitting on. That is our Control 4 automation programmer class. That's our certification class. We create short videos on how to complete certain tasks. We are building dealer forums, just everything, right? And so one of the big things that my team has been working on in the past year is revamping and reintroducing PCNA. So PCNA may sound familiar. PCNA originally was the Package Network Certification or Package Certification, Certified Network Administrator, course that Control 4 and Package created that was released about 3 years ago now. Obviously, since we are now one company, SnapAV and Control 4, we have rebuilt that entire course, or I guess you would say online, if you will, university, to become a centralized certification program for Package and for Araknis. And so now PCNA is Professional Certified Network Administrator that allows you to take self-paced, go at your own, go at whatever rate you want to courses in everything from building your first network to deploying routers, switches, and access points at advanced levels, and then managing all that appropriately with OvrC, all in one, one course, one offering there that we can offer to you guys. And this is available to every single Snap AV customer. You guys shop at local, you guys shop at your Snap AV Pro stores, you are Snap AV customers, so you were able to get access to PCNA. So I want to show you guys a quick little video here, just so you guys are aware of what PCNA is, because my team made this video and they do a better job of explaining it than I do. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to see what this is. So give me a second here. Let me pull this up. All right.
For short is an
Here we go.
Professional Certified Network Administrator, or PCNA for short, is an award-winning training program created to help technicians design and install better networks. Its 6 fast-paced online courses were designed to be helpful and engaging, and the expertly produced curriculum is valuable no matter which networks you use. But the best part of PCNA? It's hands-on. Each trainee gets to choose between a complete set of Araknis or packaged networking gear, the equipment they get to keep, so they can continue learning at home even after they're certified. So it's not just theory, it's practice. And the course is a steal. Sign up all your technicians today.
So PCNA is not just a course that we felt like we gave you guys the best knowledge possible. PCNA is a course that's a culmination of what we have learned from you as integrators. It's a culmination of what we've learned and we have used from interactions and integration from our engineering team, our tech support team. We basically took all of the brains we could and brought them together to build a network certification course that makes sense for you as installers, because at the end of the day, our industry is unique. What we're doing as an industry is unique. And so that means our training platform needs to be unique with it. So like I was saying, 6 courses, everything from building your first network, going into things like network design at the very end there. It is there is a cost to the course, but what you're essentially getting, like I said, is we're sending you a box of gear and you pick the path you want. Do you want to learn all of this technology, these theories on Araknis gear, or do you want to learn this on package gear? Both are options that are available for you to do so on. The course is $1,200 at the start. And then once you pass the course, you're given a $650 rebate, which essentially means you're just paying for the equipment at the end of the day. You get to keep the equipment and you get a rebate at the end of it all. So PCNA is a great way for you guys to continue to grow your knowledge in the industry. We're going to keep doing things like what we're doing today. We're going to keep doing webinars and creating smart skill videos, and coming to you guys when we can and getting in person to do these types of training events. But at the end of the day, there is a need for in-depth, down in the depths technical trainings, and that takes time, and it takes repetition, and it takes hands-on. And like I said, a 16-hour or a 12-hour training course that spans 2 days on networking, it can work. It can work, but it's not as easy, and a lot of times people don't learn the best that way. So it's a great thing for you guys to get involved with. We've been doing a lot of hard work getting this thing rolling there. So it's a great way for you guys to learn more about not just Araknis, but OvrC and Wattbox as well. Great question, Patrick. I had a couple questions from this morning, similar, that I will make sure that I get answered, and I'll give it to Gary so he can follow up with you guys if need be. So for those that didn't see, Patrick was asking, what if you've already bought one of these packages in the past? I have to see what the process is to re-enable that. So I'll make sure to write that down. All right, sorry about that. I just want to make sure I make that note so I don't forget because I will forget. All right, guys. So that's my little spiel, my spiel, my soapbox for my team and the stuff that my team has been working on, because it's a big deal for us. We spend a lot of time and effort on this program. So now to the kind of the nuts and the bolts, the meat and potatoes, what we're going to talk about today, which is Araknis and OvrC, right? And kind of how all that comes together. The biggest thing that I want to kind of reintroduce here in the beginning is OvrC. I'm not going to give you guys a full reintroduction to the OvrC platform. I just want to give you guys an update where we stand today. Obviously, if you guys don't know what OvrC is yet, I encourage you guys to learn. It is the #1 remote management platform in the industry. To give you guys some by the numbers examples here, we're at about 16,000 users on the OvrC platform in any given month. We recently eclipsed the 340,000 locations around the world. But the big number here is right here. We have about 13 million devices being monitored on the OvrC platform today. 13 million. And so what we're going to talk about today, right, is networking, and specifically we're going to be talking about Wi-Fi and the way that Wi-Fi interacts with your networks, and the importance of doing it the right way, and being efficient, and being able to see and troubleshoot what you did. Because at the end of the day, you guys know this, you're living this every single day. Networking, Wi-Fi is the most important thing that you guys do. It's the backbone of your jobs, right? And a lot of times, the issues that you guys are experiencing in the field aren't even your fault. A lot of times there's nothing you can do about it, but your client's going to blame you, and you're going to need to be able to speak to that appropriately. Example, if some of you guys are here for round 2 of this session, you saw me disconnect 4 times this morning from my session, 4 times. Now that was my ISP. I know that because my entire network, it never went down, and I can see that in the logs of my network. My network was smooth the whole time this morning, and I can see it in my logs, but in the ISP's logs, they were disconnecting. So it's important to have the tools and the visibility to be able to troubleshoot your networks when things do go wrong, because they will go wrong. I know people want to have these bulletproof, foolproof networks, and to an extent, you can get close. But at the end of the day, networking is networking, and your clients are going to be bringing devices onto these networks at a feverish pace. And you need to be prepared to manage that appropriately. And that 13 million device number there, that's a good indication of what we're talking about. What we see nowadays, the average consumer network, right? The average consumer isn't our customer. The average consumer is, the Best Buy customer, if you will. Those networks are around, 20, 30 devices on average. Probably for the most part, a majority of their devices are on Wi-Fi because they don't know a lot about direct connecting and hardlining things. The average network in our realm, in our industry, right? We can see that through OvrC, 80 plus devices. And that number is going up rapidly, right? The amount of devices that are on these networks. You guys can see that if you have OvrC deployed today. And so as that number continues to go up and more of those devices continue to get on Wi-Fi, it's important to have these tools at your disposal. So again, as a recap, if you guys have been in my trainings before, I've talked about this a little bit. There's 3 components of OvrC. OvrC native integration, OvrC Home, and OvrC Pro. Today, we're going to focus on that native integration, specifically with Araknis, right? That's what we're going to focus on. It's native integration with Araknis, because that's really the important part of networking. But remember that native integration means that you buy any of these product categories, and there's more that I don't even have on this screen right now. You buy any of these product categories either through us or at your Snap AV Pro stores, and you get access to these features at no extra cost. It's a value add to the product itself. And so for Araknis, that sits in our routers, access points, network switches. You get full feature sets that are specific to those products when you buy them. That's a big deal to be able to get those feature sets, right? And so as a recap, I just want to recap the different product offerings in the Araknis realm to help give you guys a little more of an understanding of what I'm talking about here. So we'll jump into the OvrC side first. I just want to refresh all the things that we have from an Araknis product side of things really quick. Just overview. I'm not going to give you the big salesy presentation here, but as a reminder, right? 3 different buckets of our network offerings: routers, switches, access points. So full lineup of routers, 3 different options: 110, 110 Wi-Fi, and 310. The 110 series, you could say, are our entry-level routers. They're entry-level in that they're a plastic chassis, less physical ports on these guys, and that's really the main thing, right? After that, you get in the 310 series. That 110 Wi-Fi, I like to point out that the Wi-Fi piece of that is intended to be an all-in-one standalone solution. We don't intend that 110 Wi-Fi to be the beginning of a distributed wireless network. If you want to do a distributed wireless network, do it the right way. Get that 310 in there, or 110 non-Wi-Fi by itself, and have access points spread throughout the house appropriately. The 110 Wi-Fi is intended to be standalone. But that 310 series is a big deal. The 310 series is our, what we call our kind of professional grade solution, in that the professional grade solution, it's rack mountable, obviously, metal chassis, more physical ports on there. But one of the most important things on that 310 series is our LAN 4 port, or our WAN 3. It's kind of two different areas there. So let me bring that up and show what I'm talking about here. So this is the back of our 310 series router. Our 310 series router has 3 physical LAN connections, all rated at a gigabit, 2 physical WANs. So for that dual WAN scenario there, both rated at a gigabit. And then you'll see this LAN WAN combo port. So it can either be used as a third WAN connection, not very a normal use case, or a fourth LAN connection. When used as a fourth LAN connection, that port is actually rated at 1.3 gigabits per second of bidirectional traffic. The reason that's important is this is normal for all routers out there. Your normal LAN connections are rated for a gig of traffic, one direction, up or down, but not a gig both directions at the same time. It's just, that's normal in networking, right? This LAN 4 connection is essentially double the speed of the port on a standard router. So when you follow along and you deploy your networks, if you do the way that we recommend, which is this router on a stick, this core topology, where you have your router as the first, and you have a single connection that's coming from this LAN 4 port right here to your core network switch, that ensures that this pipe between the two is the most efficient path possible. You have the most bandwidth between your router and your core switch, and then you can spider off of that core switch from there. That LAN 4 is a really important piece there to talk about the difference between the 110 and the 310 series. It ensures that you have the best possible bandwidth within your networks. So I always like to just recap that on the router side of things, is using that fourth LAN port on the Araknis routers for that purpose. So if there's questions, you guys feel free to pop those in there as well. So again, I told you guys, quick recap. I'm not going into anything crazy. The last thing I'll say, all of our Araknis routers, they come embedded with our OvrC Pro hub as well. That's a big deal. It gets you access to OvrC Pro on your job sites at no extra cost. OvrC Pro, if you buy it standalone, is probably anywhere from $150 to $300, depending on your dealer level with SnapAV. If you buy an Araknis router, you get OvrC Pro for free. Easy peasy. That's a no-brainer there, in my opinion. So that's our routers. Again, I told you real quick. Network switches. It's simple. I'm not going to go crazy here. 3 lines. 110 non-managed, 210 managed, 310 managed. The difference between a 210 and a 310 is the PoE. The PoE is the main difference between the 210 and the 310. We have rear and we have front-facing switches in terms of the port orientation. Rear, as you see here, with fancy blue lights on the front, and front-facing switches in every single size, just so you guys have those options there. And then we have a full line of compact series switches and managed and unmanaged options. The unmanaged options in the compact series are 5, 8, and 16 ports with a single port of PoE. And then we have a 16 port 210 series managed PoE switch that you can fit into your structured wiring cans, into your Versa boxes, whatever it may be. Those are really cool pieces of hardware. It's not just the software, it's the hardware as well. The key with network switches is that pretty much every job we should have a switch for you. And if we don't have an Araknis switch for you, you have access to our package line of network switches. We recently just released our MS series of package switches about second half of last year. Our MS series of package switches are layer 3 non-PoE and PoE versions with 10 gig uplink network switches. So if you need the big mamma jamma, you have access to our package line as well. So we should have a network switch for pretty much every job you guys are putting out there. If Araknis doesn't do it from the layer 2 side, jump up to package and you do it from the layer 3 side. And then again, the bulk of what we're going over today, guys, the main reason you're here is to talk about Wi-Fi a little bit. So Wi-Fi, right, is such an important part of what you guys are doing. There's a few different offerings that you see here. I have all my drawings from earlier still on here. I crossed out that 300 series because if it hasn't gone away yet, it's on its way out. It's an older technology. I don't recommend deploying those anymore, guys. They're there if you're going into a job that's kind of old and you just want to stay consistent. But I recommend staying away from those guys. The 500 series and 700 series, same thing. Still that square design. They're a older technology. They still work well in some jobs, but I recommend we stick right in this realm, the 510 series and the 810 series access points. It's a big deal, right? And so the biggest thing when you talk about Wi-Fi and the growth of Wi-Fi and where we're going as an industry is, for a while now, we're kind of tapped out on the speed of Wi-Fi exponentially increasing. When I say the speed, I mean the max theoretical speed. Mainly because our devices can't get much faster, and the RF spectrum that we operate in can't allow us to get that fast because there's so much going on. So what's really changing in the realm of Wi-Fi isn't the max speed; it is the ability to operate in a much denser network. So if you look at these older access points, sorry about that. You look at these older access points, the 300 series, you look at the 500, the 700, those are the wave 1 AC access points. They're limited in a dense network because those access points can only communicate with one device at a time. Seriously, one device at a time. So if you're sitting here and you have an access point, let's just use this access point as our example, and we have devices all around over here. If all of these devices want to talk, it has to wait for this device to finish. And then once that one's done, it can move to this one and then that one. And you create almost a queue. Now, in the background, it's kind of happening instantaneously. You're not really seeing a ton on smaller networks. But as your networks grow in size, that becomes a really big bottleneck. And so Wave 2 AC, which is what you see in the 510 and 810 series, that tech's been around for a little while now. Wave 2 expands upon that with a feature called multi-user Mimo. And it really what it allows the access point to do is to communicate with up to 4 devices at one time now. You can communicate with up to 4 devices at a time versus the previous 1 device. So the network will feel faster, not because it's getting faster, it's because the access point itself is more efficient. It can communicate more efficiently with your devices. So as you start to bring on more and more devices in your network, and these devices start to catch up with the times in terms of their wireless chipsets, they can start to take advantage of these features and these access points to truly make them robust and effective. Right. And so I'm sure people have already asked, I haven't even gotten to those questions yet. What about Wi-Fi 6? Wi-Fi 6, very similar way of doing things. Wi-Fi 6 really is improving upon this theory that's in Wave 2 AC, which is expanding upon the efficiency of the access point, getting highly dense networks. So Wi-Fi 6 adds up to 8 devices that can simultaneously communicate between those as well. That's a big deal. That's allowing you to do more and more stuff. It's really for the IoT line of things. But here's the thing: Wi-Fi 6 says it's better for IoT. At the end of the day, your end device must support Wi-Fi 6 for it to be Wi-Fi 6 compliant and take advantage of those new efficiencies. That $30 Philips Hue hub that you're deploying doesn't support Wi-Fi 6. Your Amazon Alexas don't support Wi-Fi 6. So we'll get there as a manufacturer for you guys, but we're not there yet. And that's something that I want to kind of just bring up from that side of things. We're really focusing on making sure that what you're deploying today is the most efficient way possible in terms of communication and things like that. So like I said, our 510 series and our 810 series are really the keys that we focus on when we talk about deploying access points. That's what we're going to focus on today as our examples as well. So there's all these things that come into play, right? All these things that can be a challenge in deploying Wi-Fi, and it's important to get it right and to be efficient when you're out there doing it. And so one of the latest features we released within OvrC in the last year was our new Araknis OvrC feature called SSID Management. So SSID Management, let me bring you guys back here, no zoom. SSID Management is our solution to centralize your Wi-Fi deployment and troubleshooting. If you guys have been working with Araknis for a while, you've been with us for a little bit, you may have seen or interacted with this the old way in the past. When you deployed Araknis in the past, it was very much on a one-to-one or one-by-one access point type of deployment. When you wanted to make a change, you had to go to each access point individually and make a change individually. And that's just time consuming. That's no fun. It's a waste of money for you guys as well. So SSID management is a new solution where we can talk about that. SSID management is accessible on any network you deploy with 510 series and 810 series access points on the latest firmware. That's the biggest thing to remember. On the latest firmware, we have those access points deployed, you have access to this SSID management. And so you log in to your OvrC account and you go to that job site and you go to the site settings tab there at the top. The site settings tab at the top is a quick way for you to see where that's at. You'll see that Wi-Fi management icon right there. So if you go on to a brand new job site, it'll ask you, do you want to import? Sorry, if you go to a brand new job site with nothing on that job site, you'll start from scratch. If you go to a job site where you already have access points deployed and you want to go ahead and get this thing going, it's going to say, hey, we've detected that you already have Araknis access points there. Do you want to import the configuration into SSID management so you can properly manage? And you can do that if you want to. It'll be a similar thing like this. We're saying, hey, we're going to import the device configuration through OvrC. We're going to import the guest SSIDs, and then we're going to disable individual device configuration through OvrC so that you come to this section and configure globally, because that's the better way of doing things. So let's talk about if you were going from scratch. If you're starting a network from the beginning, what does this look like and what makes sense from that perspective? So the first thing you do if you're starting this from scratch, you would click on Add Network, and you can easily right here. It's very, very self-paced. It should be easy to understand. Put in your network name, what radio you want it to use. I recommend both, and keeping the SSID the same for both. Making sure that you have a status enabled, that you have it set to broadcast the SSID on that network. If you want to do client isolation in a commercial type deployment, please do so appropriately, putting in your password as well. And then you're selecting what devices or what access point on that job site you want to deploy this network to. Most likely you're going to be deploying it to everything, and so you can select all of the available access points and deploy that SSID. You're done. Click apply, save, and it will send that SSID to every single access point on the job site right there. It's quick, it's easy, it's efficient. But at the end of the day, that's pretty easy. One of my favorite things still, though, is if you ever want to make a change, you can do so here. The most common thing is If the client forgets their password, you can quickly come in here and change their password. That's just a great way to just offer a convenience feature. The client said, "Hey, I had a party over the weekend and I forgot about the guest network, so I gave everybody my normal Wi-Fi password. Can you go ahead and change that for me real quick?" Okay, fine. Hop in here, change it, give them the new password, call it a day. But really, probably my favorite feature in all this, guys, is what you're seeing at the bottom of that, which is the wireless radio settings option. This is where you're going to find a ton of time saved when deploying and troubleshooting your networks. So first and foremost, on your job sites, uh, I hope you're not just throwing in some access points and hoping they work and calling it a day, that you're doing deployment either with tools from MetaGeek, you're using the site survey feature on our access points to make sure that things are in the right locations, making sure that you're on the right channel, those types of things. The challenge, though, is that whenever you're ready to make those changes and you're ready to adjust things like your transmit power on the access point, the channel selection, uh, that can take a while in the old way of doing things because you have to go through individually, one by one, and make changes in the old way. The new way, again, we give you this global view of everything going on. So you can hop into each individual access point on that job site and you can adjust the channel selection. If it's on auto, you can try and leave it on auto. If you're in a very complex and dense area, if you're in the city or you're in, really, really tight neighborhoods, auto may not be the best way to do things. You can adjust your channel bandwidth. I won't go into in-depth details of what that is, but just note that that's an important thing to be able to change and adjust. And you can also adjust the transmit power, how powerful the antenna is on that access point as well, to make sure that you're not overpowering the rest of the access points around you. It's really important to be able to adjust these on the fly in a big global kind of view. I'll show you guys how I like to use this. The best way I like to just kind of show this off is I'm going to use a nice little Windows snap feature here. And we are going to bring up one side of my screen is my access point. The other side of my screen is SSID management. And I want to show you how you can easily deploy these together. If you didn't realize, in the local UI of all of our wireless access points that are accessible through OvrC, you can click on Site Survey under the Advanced settings, and you can click Scan. And that's going to scan for all the other discoverable wireless networks within range of that SSID or of that access point. It's very valuable to be able to see. If you have tools from MetaGeek, they'll be able to show you similar things. You can pull up an app on your phone as well. But the most important thing is what that access point is seeing. It is important for your phone to see it, but the most important thing is what the access point is seeing in that deployment. And so you can easily get a view at this global level and see what's going on and quickly cross-reference the two and make changes appropriately. So I was doing this earlier with some of the guys this morning, and I saw some things that definitely concerned me in my network. So whenever I'm doing this, what I'm looking for, what I'm looking at right away are these two columns, BSSID and Signal. So BSSID is a individual identifier for a new SSID. It doesn't mean it's a new access point. It means it's a new SSID. Every single access point has a MAC address for the LAN port on the MAC address, the 2.4 gigahertz radio, and the 5 gigahertz radio. And then it also has a MAC address for every SSID you create. So what I'm looking for when I can see a lot of BSSIDs, if I see a lot of BSSIDs and they all have similar SSIDs with them, man, I'm nervous. That's a lot of Wi-Fi. I mean, look at this right here. I don't know whose this is. It's one of my neighbors. I'm gonna have to go find out what the heck they're doing. There are 6 essentially networks, all in the 5 gigahertz spectrum, all on channel 149, all around negative 80, 85 dBm on their signal strength. man, that's close. And if I know correctly, yeah, I know where that street is. That's not my street. That's the adjacent street to my house. When I'm deploying, heck, man, I don't want to be on channel 155 on anywhere close to channel 149 on my 5 GHz spectrum. So even if my auto selection got close to, I'm going to stay away from that, because if theirs ever moves, I don't want to be anywhere near that, because that's a lot of stuff going on there. This one here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more of this access point, negative 88 dBm, right in that realm. On channel 48, I probably want to stay away from that channel range in the 5 GHz spectrum as well. Those are the two ones that I care about the most. There's a lot of things going on there. But then I'll also just to be sure, I'll look for the network that has the strongest signal strength near me and stay away from its channels as well. The point here, guys, is that you can now look at this from a global level on one screen and hop over here and make those changes across your entire network right here in SSID management. Obviously, the ultimate goal will be for this to be automatic. And maybe one day, even the ones that you see that are automatic today, the ones that are truly dynamic, what I mean is they're doing it all the time, there are some that exist out there that do that. Those are expensive solutions. As you get into dense scenarios, and I mean, my houses, the houses in my neighborhood are not that close. We have a lot of trees around us here, so that also impacts this. But you can still see the amount of 5 GHz network I'm seeing around me. It's so important to utilize these tools and have SSID management there with you to properly deploy and control these things across the board. So like I said, today SSID management is helping you on your deployment, but also helping you on your troubleshooting and being able to tweak your networks as efficiently as possible on the fly. All right, so that's the biggest gist of what I had that I wanted to get out of my off of my chest today. Let me jump into a couple of the questions, not a couple, a lot of the questions I've seen here, because we've got a good 20 minutes here as well. So there's a bunch of questions already in here. If you guys have more questions, please submit those, and I'm going to go through those and do my best to answer some of the ones that we can answer together here on the webinar as well.
Yeah, great job, buddy. That was nice. I really love the real world scenarios there around your house. Awesome job. Yeah, guys, get the questions in and let's spend the rest of the time. We don't have to hard stop at the top of the hour. Let's keep rolling. As long as we got Derek, let's do it.
Hey, Dat, good question. Is there is there a how-to on OvrC Home for client management? Actually, within PCNA, we do have some good OvrC Home documentation available today. So when you take PCNA, we teach you guys how to go through and understand and learn that. So that's going to be your best route to learn about that. And then I'll check to make sure we don't have any white papers to go along with that as well. So good question there. Thanks, Dat. Yes, Jeff, I'm saying that LAN 4, the intention is for that to be the main connection to your core switch. LAN 4 can be an SFP port or a hardwired copper connection, a Cat5e, Cat6. Either option is available between the two. So that is an SFP port or a physical RJ45 connection for LAN 4 as an option there. So great question. Let me see here. Let me get some more of these other questions. So Patrick, I see your question. Do we a packets per second rating? I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone rate anything packets per second. All of our switches in terms of LAN to WAN throughput, we're at about, if you do a true LAN to WAN throughput on the Araknis router from a download perspective, we're at about, I think, like 800 or like 960 megs per second. It's a gigabit rated port, but based off of header sizes and packet sizes and things like that, you're looking at about 960 megs per second as your max LAN to WAN throughput on the Araknis router side of things. Hopefully that helps clarify a little bit. But if you're looking for something more specific, please let me know for sure. So Brian, good question there on any difference between the OvrC Pro and the router versus the OvrC Pro as a standalone hub. The biggest thing you're really getting in terms of differences are some more tech support specific features that allow you to better manage site adoption types of things. I won't go too deep into some of the details there, but if you're going on to a job takeover, as an example, an OvrC hub might make more sense to take out of the gate because it does give us some capabilities that the Araknis router that we can't do from that perspective. But in terms of discovering and managing devices and getting remote access to things and that type of stuff, OvrC Pro and the routers and OvrC Pro, the standalone hub, they're the same in that capacity. So I want to, hopefully that clears up that a little bit as well. So Scott, that's a great question. I think maybe a lot of you guys may have run into this as well. You have a mix of 510, 500, and 700 series access points on a job site. Is this a problem? So the first thing I would ask is the client complaining? If the client's not complaining, I strongly believe in don't break, or sorry, don't fix what ain't broken. If they have some issues and they're seeing some challenges and you're noticing some things, then yes. The biggest thing there is that 510 series access point can do more than the 500 and 700 series. If your deployment and your ranges are set up appropriately, you don't have too much overlap, and your fast roaming seems to be working fine, that's great. The fast roaming is going to function between the 510 and 5 and 700 series. Your handoff, is going to function as well. They're gonna coexist. But that wave 2 access point, that wave 2 technology I talked about before, it's only going to happen on that 510 series. So if that 500 series or 700 series is in a very dense area versus the 510, you might start to see some challenges there. So if the client's not complaining, unless you want to try and make some money on them, you don't need to upgrade. But if they're seeing some issues, yeah, it could definitely make a difference there between the two. To give you an example, in my house, you guys can see here, this is my OvrC account. I have, I think 29 monitored devices from a Snap AV perspective. And then I think I have like 60 total devices. I have 83 total devices on my network. And just to give you an example, it's myself, my wife, and my 8.5-month-old daughter. She's not using very much in terms of networking devices. But she does have some. I have 2 access points in my house. I have a 510 downstairs, and I have an 810 upstairs. The 810 is actually right behind me. My house is about 2,800 square feet. I have them staggered diagonally. That's the best way I recommend doing a 2-story house at about that size, staggered diagonally. 810's up here, 510's over here. Let me see if I can get this on camera. There we go, diagonal. 810's over here, 510's over here. I get great coverage, perfect coverage to be fair. I pay for about 200 down from Spectrum. I get about 220 down on my wireless devices everywhere throughout the house. Just to give you an example of deployment, I usually recommend a plan for about an access point per 750 to 1,000 square feet. When you're deploying, I usually recommend trying to your kind of rule of thumb, if you will, is an access point per 750 to 1,000 square feet. That's kind of your realm there when you're starting to think about design from a very, very basic standpoint. Philip, I challenge you to say, is there a plan for 710? Well, the 700 series access point was a 3x3 antenna. Your antenna types on your access points are reliant on the end devices. There are very few end devices that take advantage of a 3x3 antenna. Most devices are 2x2, and then we're seeing some high-end devices go to 4x4. But there's very few that take advantage of a 3x3. So I think not just us, but you'll see the industry move towards more 2x2 and 3x3 type deployments, which is what that 700 series was. So that 810 really is the replacement, if you will, for the 700 in the grand scheme of things. Kirk, I have not heard about the import process failing on a couple of those job sites. What I would tell you is that in the last, I think, week, we've released a server update to OvrC that addressed a lot of kind of bugs that we saw with the initial deployment of SSID management. So that may be a part of what we corrected in that. But I'll make sure to keep an eye on that because I have not heard of it failing you know, at any frequency like that. So Brian, I see what you're saying about keeping the default network and password on those. So one of the requirements that we have in all of our products today, right, is you must change the default password on any smart device that you're deploying. Any of them, not just Snap AV. This was a California law that became a federal law. It's actually not federal now, but everyone deploys in California, so your products have to do it. So if you never plan to log into the Araknis UI, it will never ask you to update the default password. And I recommend that you guys update your default passwords. So you do have to log into the local interface to update the login for the access point themselves. A good point there, Brian. So Mark, that's a great question around how well does the system handle handoff between one AP to another? So the biggest thing that you see when we talk about that is not, it's really dependent on your deployment, right? If you have your access points really close to each other, you get caught in this kind of limbo where they're too close and they don't know when to hand off. And then obviously if they're too far apart, you disconnect from one and you move to another. We recommend that kind of -60 to -70 dBm realm between your access points. What I mean by that is that whenever you're doing your site survey, you should be able to see your other access point. Let's see if I see mine on my list here. If you see your other access point, that should be a good indicator of how close it is to you. You can also do a site survey on your phones to see that as well. And you should see that in that -60 to -70 dBm realm. That's your sweet spot. If your other access point is at that signal strength in relation to the one you're logged into, your handoff's going to be smooth and it's going to work well. But at the end of the day, the handoff is always reliant on the end device. The end device is what allows the handoff to occur. We find that Apple devices tend to be very sticky because they don't want to give up and potentially affect the experience of the user of the phone. So unfortunately, it's a challenge, but getting that realm -60 to -70 dBm is really the important part. We have a whole course inside of PCNA dedicated to Araknis or to access point deployment and tweaking so you can properly have handoff flowing within your networks. It's a great question. Yeah, Patrick, exactly. It's easier to canvass the neighbor to fix their channel issue. I would agree, man. If I could guess, I might start shining some laser pointers at their equipment and see if I can make some things happen there from my windows and whatnot. It's a great example there. So Mike, could I quickly compare the pros and the cons of 700 versus 810? So I think that the ultimate thing, and you really can't say a pro and a con. The 810 is better in every piece of the every fact of the matter, right? The 810 is a better access point than the 700 series. The only thing the 700 really does differently is it technically has a stronger radio than the 810, and that's just because the 700 was manufactured before the FCC put regulations in place that limits how powerful a wireless radio can be. So the 700 series technically is more powerful in that sense. The 810 though is better in every other, I guess you could say, fact of the matter in that sense. The 700 can be a little bit more powerful, but the 810 is better at every single level beyond that. Joseph, good question. These access points will not create a mesh network, correct? Correct. It will not create a mesh network today. And I'll leave it at that. 2x2 technology. It's a great question there, Johnny. 2x2 technology will still allow 4 devices at a time to operate on a single radio, a single antenna. That's the important part of that 2x2. Is prior to Wave 2 AC, you could have 2 different radios if deployed appropriately, and one device can communicate with one radio at a time. But now you can have 4 devices communicating with a single antenna at a time with Wave 2 AC. That's a big piece of that. It's really important to kind of grasp where that's at. Mark, I always recommend activating fast roaming. The only reason you should not be activating or have an issue with fast roaming, it's probably because you have a device that has a old wireless chipset or has a cheap wireless chipset. HP printers. Sorry, I didn't mean to cough there, guys. Fast roaming is a standard in the networking industry. It is the IEEE standard 802.11 RK, and I believe there's a bunch of other ones in there too. That standard it denotes what we do as a manufacturer to deploy fast roaming. We follow the standard. We don't make anything up. And what that standard says is that a device must support fast roaming for it to connect with a network that has fast roaming turned on. So if a device is giving you trouble with fast roaming, it's probably because it doesn't support it. HP printers are a great example. They have since started updating their components to be up to date. Legacy Mac computers are an issue. Really cheap wireless devices are an issue. One that I see a lot are like older Wi-Fi pool controllers, things like that. So a lot of people have done in the past is they'll create a separate SSID and disable the password. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. What I mean by that is you go into your network settings in OvrC, and you might go to your Wi-Fi management screen and you try and create a new SSID on that access point, and you don't put a password. Don't do that. That's so insecure. Even if that SSID is not being broadcasted, don't do that. Mainly because it's not going to fix the issue. It'll band-aid the issue. Because what's failing in the fast roaming protocol is part of the fast roaming protocol says that I need to be able to pre-authenticate and share sensitive information like a password between the end device and that access point to make the handoff work. And if I can't share the password information because you don't support that protocol, I can't connect to that access point. I'm not gonna allow it to connect and cause an issue. And so when you create an SSID with no password, well, it essentially gets beyond that because, well, there's no password. It doesn't have to share it. And so it gives the illusion that it's fixing the issue, but you're just creating an open network. What I recommend to people is that those job sites, that's going to be an issue, deploy, I like to call it a legacy access point. Deploy a centralized access point on that job site that you only have 2.4 gigahertz turned on. You only have 2.4 gigahertz turned on, and you don't have fast roaming enabled. You don't have fast roaming enabled. You turn fast roaming off on that network, and you connect all those devices that give you a hard time, your wireless remotes for your control system that still require your HP printers, a lot of your IoT devices connect to that legacy access point. Keep those off. They don't need high bandwidth. They don't need anything crazy. Get those on that. Hide the SSID. Client never knows the difference, but it gives you peace of mind that you got everything running appropriately. The devices that need fast roaming, the devices that need the better bandwidth, the devices that need the good stuff, they're all connected to your standard network. That legacy access point is set up separately to make sure that everything flows appropriately inside your network. I know it's an extra cost, but at the end of the day, that's the standard we're faced with. And there's always going to be devices that are out there. There's still so many people getting into the IoT realm that we're still seeing so many cheap wireless chipsets that are out there that people keep deploying. It's slowly starting to change, but it's something we're seeing a lot. So good question there. It was a great conversation there on fast roaming. Jimmy Jordan, when you have multiple access points, you want them all on the same channel. You do not want them all on the same channel. You want to stagger your access points in a honeycomb type fashion, in that you should never have an adjacent access point on the same channel. It's pretty easy to deploy when you're talking about 2.4. There's really only 3 channels you should think about: 1, 6, and 11. 1, 6, and 11 is all you should think about. So you have channel 1 here. This access point going next to it should be on 6 or 11. You move over here, that access point should be not the same channel as that. And you go in a honeycomb fashion. You never want them to be adjacent channels all across the board. The same concept goes for 5 gigahertz. Your access point should always be on different channels across the job site. You don't want to clog up the RF spectrum, especially when you get to a job site with large amounts of access points that are out there. It's a great question, George. There's not a major performance difference between that combo port if you're using it for a standalone WAN connection. Mainly because I guess if you had a internet connection that was faster than a gig, maybe. But outside of that, there's not really a major difference between it if you're using that combo port as a WAN connection. Great question. I'm just checking through some of these questions here. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here, guys. Lots of good questions. Jay, I want to answer that one. Asking, you've been told that using a non-Araknis router with Araknis access points will cause issues with Wi-Fi devices. More specifically, using an ISP router, how much truth is there to this? I don't want to call out whoever may have told you that, but theoretically speaking, there should be no truth to that. We're not doing anything on a technical level to mesh our router and our access points together from that sense. Now, if you're using a cheap router on a job site, that could just cause generic network issues, but it shouldn't interact and cause specific issues with Araknis access points. To that, that end, I know plenty of people that deploy Araknis routers and Ubiquity access points. I know plenty of people that deploy, Cisco ASA grade firewalls and Araknis access points. So no, there's no truth or any reason to think that a third party brand router will cause any specific issues with Araknis access points and cause other Wi-Fi issues. A lower cost, cheaper router, specifically, the ISP modem router combo, as an example, could cause, like I said, generic network issues. But those would be separate from a access point specific issue, if you will. So Matt, it's a great question on, are there any specific difference between a 210 and a 310 series switch? I will say there are no specific differences that I expect you to ever utilize. And I don't mean that you specifically, I mean you in general as our dealer base. There are some advanced, really in-depth quality of service and voice over IP type features that we don't have in there. I'm talking about advanced type features. If you have a job site where you find the need for a feature that's only in a 310 and you deploy it at 210, you are more than welcome to call me, and I will send you a 310 to replace that 210 on that job site. But I'm pretty sure you won't find any differences between the two in that sense. Let's see here. I like this question from Eric. What is the rule for outdoor coverage of our 700 series outdoor access point? What I usually say is that line of sight, Eric, if there's nothing in front of you, you should actually probably stay connected to that 700 series outdoor access point about 300 feet away. You'll probably have a connection. Is that connection going to be good? Probably not, but you'll have it. I'd say that anything further than about 100, 150 feet, you're running the risk of having a degraded experience. But you should maintain a pretty good connection at 100, 150 feet away from that 700 series. It's a much more defined antenna, so it works pretty well. The biggest rule of thumb on the 700 series is depending on where the action area is outdoors, that's where you want that access point aimed. So what I mean by aimed is you want to get the access point up high and aim down to that access point or to that action area, if you will, because I said it's a more defined signal strength. So if you mount the access point down low, it's not gonna get as far. So if you mount it up high and point it down to the action area, it's gonna make sure you get a much better coverage in that zone. That's why we make that angle mount that you can use for our 700 series outdoor access point for that purpose. It's a great question. So I think I see a question that came in twice. Let me see if I can get an answer on that real quick. because I'm off the top of my head, I'm not remembering it. I don't want to answer out of turn because I don't like guessing. So one thing I don't like to do when I answer questions is guess. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer, I won't tell you. Well, I'll tell you, I'll try and figure it out. So give me 1 second here and let me verify if I have the answer on that. So I know I saw a question come in around OpenVPN and status. OpenVPN should still be supported on the Araknis router, so you shouldn't be having any challenges from an OpenVPN standpoint. We're still working on some more specific type of VPNs, but OpenVPN, you should be ready to roll from that perspective. And then I'm verifying one other thing here. Okay, I think I might have, I saw a question come through from Todd around dual WAN and some of the capabilities around dual WAN. Todd, if you could follow with me personally, I'll look into that. I don't want to keep trying to find the answer. Feel free to follow up with me and I can look into that for you to give you a specific answer there. Alan, similar to what I was saying before, no issues if you're not using an Araknis router and you're using Araknis access points with handoff. There's no interaction between the two. There's no controller inside of our Araknis router. So if you deploy someone else's router and use all of our access points, fast roaming still works within the access points. It has nothing to do with anything else. So great question there. I see we're getting here to the time. I want to answer a few of these questions quick. When deploying one SSID using both bands versus two separate SSIDs, we recommend when you deploy your SSIDs using the same SSID name for both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz band. So you see my example here. This one's disabled as a test. My Bssid is the SSID for both radios. We recommend deploying with both radios. The only reason you would want to deploy as two separate names is because you're testing. You want to make sure you're connected to that band as a test. I don't recommend permanently deploying with separate names. It only causes more confusion for your customer, and it's not the best type of experience for them. So great question. Let me see here. Man, we got some good questions that have come through.
Yeah.
So Alan, beamforming is always active when utilizing our access point. So it's kind of one of those, pay for play features. You plug the access point in and beamforming is occurring. So for those that don't know what beamforming is a feature in an access point that allows it to truly use kind of like physics and hone in on the direction of your devices physically in relation to that access point. So it allows it to fire off that communication in a more generalized direction to where that device is at to make sure that it's the most efficient when getting through. So beamforming operates all the time, and 2.4 versus 5 gigahertz being on separate SSIDs will not make a difference. So that's a great question. Joe, unfortunately, the Wi-Fi management feature is not enabled for our guest network feature and our access points today. You got me on that one. That's a in progress solution. It is not enabled using our embedded guest network feature. You could use it to deploy a guest network temporarily and turn it on and off like you've seen here that I have. And client isolation, if you turn on client isolation, it will do things very similar to a guest network, but they'll still be a part of your network as a whole. So it's a great question. And I guess I'll recap that one. Yes, all of our access points, they will run fast roaming without the router. I'm getting the impression that there may be some misinformation running out there from some of our friends in the industry, and that's concerning. So if anyone wants to spill the beans on that one, feel free to email me afterwards, because that's concerning. We don't like when we hear those types of things going on out there. There are some companies on the high end side that may have a controller built into their routers. It's not very common. Most companies will have a dedicated controller like Ruckus with Zone Director. But most companies, you're not going to need a router to support the roaming of your access points. And if you do, it's a little weird. So I would love to hear more about that, because that's important for me to understand as I see more of that out there. Another good question, Patrick. Nothing with external antennas today, and nothing from a wireless bridge scenario. We're looking into wireless bridges. If you still need one, I recommend the wireless bridge from Ubiquiti. It's the best one that I've seen at a reasonable price point. That's how they got started. That literally was the foundation of their company. So I recommend definitely utilizing Ubiquiti as a wireless bridge for today if you can find it. Gary can attest to that one.
Yep.
Let's see here. Could you repeat what we were talking about earlier about port 4 from the router to a primary switch? Also, if I have 2 primary switches, equipment rack area should each. So 2 parts there, Johnny. First and foremost, maintain that router on a stick topology. One connection from your router to your core switch. You should only have one single core switch. You may have 2 primary switches in that rack, but in your brain, you should designate one as the core switch, because at the end of the day, your network is going to try and designate a core switch. So whether you like it or not, if you think you have 2 main switches, your network only has one core switch in it, and that's what it's going to look for. And you should wire appropriately. So a single connection from your router to your network switch. If you're using an Araknis router, you use that LAN port 4 because it's a faster port to that core switch. And then from that core switch, you can easily piggyback other switches into that core switch. No problem there. But think of that core switch as the central part of your network. The router is not the central piece. The core switch is the central piece. That's the best way to think of it. Hopefully that helps answer it. I would only use LAN port 4 on that router. I would turn off all the other ports, put tape over the other ports, only use LAN port 4. Make that core switch, that managed switch, the central hub of your network. Great question. I saw an anonymous attendee. It's okay, man. If you're nervous about this one. Is the Araknis course beginner friendly? Oh, heck yes. You better believe it is, man. Our goal is to make you guys experts from beginning to end. And I promise you, even if you think it's beginner friendly and you think you're too smart for it, you're going to learn something. Guys, this course is funny. We actually animated the entire thing. We drew the course from scratch. All the animations are hand drawn by one of our guys in Salt Lake City. All the voiceover is done by one of our guys here in Charlotte. It's a lot of fun. It's beginner friendly. It gets advanced. Check it out if you haven't had a chance to, but definitely beginner friendly. Let's see if there's a few more questions I can get here. I'll hang on if you guys want to hang along. I still see about 80 people in here. I like it. I'll keep answering some questions here as
Absolutely.
I get a chance.
Let's keep it rolling.
Let's see what else we've got here. Package access points, Brian, do not allow for fast roaming on specific SSIDs, mainly because fast roaming is a radio level feature, which means that you're turning fast roaming on for the wireless radio. So you really can't turn it on and off, on a per SSID basis, because you would have to turn it off for the entire radio. Philip, we do not offer support for USB-based internet cards, 4G or 5G. We hope to get there one day. If you came to my training 2 years ago, I touted this feature through and through, and now I feel like a dummy for doing so. So I will. We hope to get there one day, but today we don't. So sorry about that. Vinny, I see if you have an ISP's modem router combo, for example, Verizon Fios, is it best to DMZ it and install the 310 behind that? So if you cannot remove the Verizon Fios piece because they're using features inside of it, and you cannot get it into bridge mode because they're using features inside of it, then yes, the third best option is to DMZ it. So option number 1, remove the modem router combo from the ISP and put your own modem in. I kind of talked about that in the beginning when I got here. Option number 2, if you can't do that, put it into bridge mode, which turns off all the routing features on it and just becomes kind of a modem at that point. Can't do option number 2, DMZ the Araknis router downwind and make sure you turn off the wireless network inside of the Verizon piece. So that's the third option there between the two. And definitely make sure they're on different subnets. You asked that question as well. If the Verizon files, a lot of times they give out a 10.0.1.1 or 10.0.0.1, just make sure the Araknis is something different so you don't conflict there. So good question, Vinny. So Jeremy, that's a good question on how does our fast roaming differ from, say, a standalone controller? And so you really have to preface that with there's a lot of misinformation in the industry when it comes to fast roaming. Our fast roaming today, you mentioned Luxel as an example. We employ a similar type of technology. What I was mentioning before, we use the standard. The way we go about managing it is a little bit different from that perspective. Most of the controllers that you find in the price range of Araknis and Luxel and even Pack Edge for that matter, and others out there that say they offer a controller type solution, most of what that controller is doing is what I just showed you today. Is assisting you with initial job site setup and initial troubleshooting by changing things globally on the job site. Most do not do anything that's dynamic after the fact at our price point. When you hop into some of the more advanced lineup of products like Zone Direct or with Ruckus, where you're spending $3,000 or $4,000, for a controller, that's going to help you in the dynamic realm of fast roaming. From our perspective today, we feel like we compete extremely well with everyone in our price range when it comes to roaming with what we can offer today. Our roaming interacts with itself inside of the access points, and we give you a lot of great tools to help tweak it and refine it appropriately. But it's you don't really see those improvements from a controller until you get to the really high-end stuff. So that's a great question. Patrick, from what I heard last, we are nearing a resolution for the DNS issue if anyone is experiencing that out there. So, Brian, I hear what you're saying, that where you've been told to separate the SSIDs because you're seeing a lot of devices get 2.4 Wi-Fi speeds. I challenge you to dig a little deeper in those scenarios. If your device is getting a 2.4 Wi-Fi speed, it's for a couple of different reasons. One, the device doesn't support 5 gigahertz, and so it can only connect to the 2.4 radio. Two, you truly are not close enough to that device to make sure. Or three, you may want to toy around with disabling band steering on your networks. Band steering is not a wireless standard. It is a style that each manufacturer can follow in whatever way they want, and it can cause some havoc on newer devices. Our 510 series and 810 series access points actually have it turned off by default, and you cannot turn it on. Some of our older 500 series and 700 series access points, you may have it on, you may want to try turning it off. If you're seeing and you're having issues with devices getting stuck on 2.4, there's probably a reason for it. It isn't a global issue with the technology. There's probably a specific reason, and I encourage you guys to dig into it, right? Literally, one of the things that you can do on your networks, let me see if I can pull it up real quick without taking up too much time here. Yeah, so I'm going to pull up my phone. Here we go, guys. You guys should be seeing my phone now. And I'm going to pull up my network analyzer tool that I have on Android. If I pull up my network analyzer tool on Android and I go to my Wi-Fi signal section here on this tool, the first option I see there, that's the access point that I'm connected to. It's the access point sitting right behind me. Man, I have good signal strength with my phone right now. But the thing I care about is when I hop into this screen and I start taking a look at things, oh, it's not telling me anymore. They must have turned this off recently. Interesting. Well, I can't show you what I wanted to show you guys. I wanted to show you the throughput, the phi rate. The phi rate is a very important feature there. I wonder if Android moved it into their wireless radio settings. Let's take a look here. They did. So in Android, you can easily see this feature. This transmit link speed. This transmit link speed is telling you the max theoretical speed that you can achieve on that connection currently. And that is dynamic in Android. You can kind of see that in Apple. It's tough to see it. You can see it from a MacBook. If you open the network settings in a MacBook, you can see that. And what that is, that link speed is related to is a throughput reading inside of the networking ecosystems that allow you to kind of understand what that means, right? And so if you see that transmit link speed and it's showing anything lower than 866, you're probably not connected to 5 gigahertz. You're probably connected to something less. And that's the first thing to understand there. And if you're not connecting to the 5 gigahertz, there's a reason for that. And it's probably because the device can't do it or because something else is blocking it, like distance or something like that. So I say to separate as a troubleshooting step, but I don't ever recommend keeping them separated for that purpose. So it's a great question. Hopefully I can expand upon that. And we go into much more detail on that in PCNA as well. We spend a whole course talking about that and best practices and how you'd work on that. So I see a good question that came through. Do I recommend using a static IP for my DNS server, or do you recommend using what the ISP recommends? So let's take a look at my router right now. Look at my WAN connection. On my router, I am not using a static IP anymore. Actually, I take that back. I am using a static IP at the LAN level. I'm redirecting all my devices, I believe, to a static IP at this level. So I do two things. One, I'm using a device in my network called a pie hole. So that's why you see that. It's a network-wide ad blocker. I encourage you guys to check it out if you haven't before. It uses a Raspberry Pi to monitor and filter my internet traffic. But I do recommend using a static DNS within your networks. So I use Google's most often when I'm in the field, 8.8.8.8.8. Let's see what else we got here. We're getting near the end of the questions here. Hey, Brent, that's a great question. Would it be best practice to keep 2.4 off unless needed? So I would love to get to a scenario where we didn't have to use 2.4 gigahertz as an option on my networks. But in the kind of answer that from just a high level, if you can deploy your networks with access points that are closer together so that your devices never have to talk to 2.4 because they never need to jump to 2.4 because they can roam between 5 gigahertz more frequently, your life is going to be better. So in that scenario, you might have to deploy an extra access point here or there and make sure that your overlap is clean. But if you can make sure your devices stay on 5 gigahertz, your life is going to be better. And that's a lot of where Wi-Fi 6 is trying to get to as well. It's a great question. Kirk, that LAN port 4 is only available on the 310 series router. It's not available on our legacy 300 series. Joe, if you go to snapav.com and go to the training section of our website, you can sign up for PCNA right there. Snapav.com, go to the, oh, you found it. Good. For anyone else that didn't hear it, snapav.com, training section of the website, you can sign up for PCNA there. At what distance do I recommend extending fiber from one switch to another? As far as that fiber will let you. Simple as that. You can send some fiber 1,000 feet. You can send some fiber 15 miles. Whatever the SFP you're using can support in terms of the type of fiber connection, and then whatever fiber you have terminated. So whatever, that's the biggest thing. We have a great relationship with the guys at Clearline. So if you want some more specifics on that, I know Gary can hook you up with some of the guys at Clearline as well that are absolute fiber experts. I believe Steve's still there. I'm sure Steve would love to talk to these guys, Gary, and they can give you some more details. But fiber is reliant on the fiber, not really the switch itself. Because it's light, guys. Light can go for miles. We've seen that. We've seen that in outer space.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one for the guys who are still here. I like this one. What is the best configuration to assist clients with Wi-Fi calling? I'm going to bring over a product page here to show you guys. We actually had to put this on here as well. Wi-Fi calling is a form of a VPN. It's a form of a VPN. And what it is doing is when you set up Wi-Fi calling, your phone is connecting to a VPN tunnel. It's essentially creating a VPN tunnel that's tunneling out of your network to a server, or to a server that's connected to the antenna for that phone provider, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, whoever it may be. So your network must allow for that type of VPN tunnel to pass through it out. By default, we have that feature turned off because it is a security concern at the most generic level. If your clients are having issues with it, all you need to do is go into the router and enable IPsec pass-through. That's the type of VPN tunnel that's being used. That is under the firewall section of our Araknis router. You'll see IPsec pass-through. Literally, the second you turn this on and you save it, and the settings get saved after 20 seconds, Wi-Fi calling will start working on your networks. You just have to enable IPsec pass-through. I know it should be enabled by default, but it is a security concern. We want to make sure that you guys know what's going on in your networks, so we're not just opening it wide open and hoping that nothing goes wrong. Great question, Monty. Clients that ask about mesh network solutions, they see at big box stores, and thoughts on combating it. So what I'll say first and foremost is there is a place in this industry for mesh. We are looking at mesh. You will probably see something from mesh down the road. When it comes to Araknis, mesh makes sense in specific scenarios. I say, for rule of thumb, mesh is probably best served in 3,000 square feet and below homes, probably closer to 2,500 square feet and below homes. There's three main areas that mesh will provide challenges for you guys and why you need to be careful with it. First and foremost, mesh is only as good as the Wi-Fi in that house. If you go into a big house with thick walls made of plaster, made of stone, made of weird materials with, all kinds of stuff, if your system struggles to transmit Wi-Fi in between those walls and rooms, you're going to eventually think you needed 3 of those mesh beacons. That becomes 6, then it becomes 7, and then you're spending just as much money on a mesh solution as you would for a distributed Wi-Fi solution. That's the first one. Second one, the amount of configuration you have access to on those is very limited. If you go to a job site, you need to deploy some advanced network features like configuring multicast, manipulating spanning tree for things like Sonos. That you truly need a custom network to deploy. You're going to struggle to deploy that type of stuff with mesh. And third, a distributed Wi-Fi solution is always going to be faster than a mesh solution. Always. Mesh has to operate what's called on a dedicated backhaul, which means that a mesh beacon, a mesh access point, is not only communicating with all your devices at one time, it's also communicating with each other at the same time on a separate backhaul. So it's using half of its processing power, half of everything it can do to talk to itself at the same time, which means the max speed is not going to be as fast as if you're using a true access point. So on smaller jobs where you got to get in and get out quick, where the client's not going to be doing anything crazy, sure, mesh can make sense, and we get that. And that's why we're partnering with solutions out there today, and we're looking at some of our own as well. But when you guys need a custom network, when you need a client to have a strong, robust network, mesh is just not going to cut it on some of your more custom, larger networks. So that's the biggest thing we say. By no means do I want to ever bash it, because there is a place for it, just not on every single job site. All right, we're getting close to the end. I see Scott. Scott, you asked this a couple times. Why 2 lines of network routers and switches? So what do you mean by 2 lines? We have Araknis and we have PackEdge, And then in the routers and switches realm, we have the 110 series, which is our lower cost kind of entry level, and the 310 series is more the professional grade. And then the different series, 110, 210, and 310 are different categories: unmanaged, managed with partial PoE, and then managed with full PoE. And then if you're talking about Araknis versus PackEdge, well, first and foremost, PackEdge came as a part of the acquisition and merger with Control4. Our product lines complemented each other, but there were some bleed over here and there. What you'll see as we continue to evolve these product lines is you'll see PackEdge start to operate more in the commercial realm as a network hardware provider, and Araknis will be kind of your go-to in the residential small business realm. You can already start to see that from the PackEdge side with our new line of MS series switches from PackEdge. Those are layer 3 PoE switches with 10 gigabit uplinks on those switches as well, which is a big deal when you're talking about some of your higher end networking jobs. So you'll see those are available at snapav.com today. You can't buy those in your SnapAV Pro stores yet, but you can buy those at snapav.com. And these guys are layer 3 managed full gigabit switches with 10 gig SFP uplinks between them as well. So they get you into more of the commercial realm of things. So we will continue to develop for Araknis and PackEdge, but you'll see their kind of expected markets ebb and flow as we continue to grow and upgrade those things as well. I like your suggestion there, Patrick. Install 5G dedicated access points between the other access points. It's a great point. So you keep the strong connections everywhere. That's a great point there. Doug, I see your question there about having some challenges. Feel free to shoot me an email and we can take a look there about what might be going on specifically. I can't say based off what you're putting in there exactly what may or may not be going wrong. So please feel free to shoot me an email and we can maybe take a look at it. I can get you synced up with the support team if we can. But we're getting close here to the end of the questions, guys. I'm not seeing anything major left in the queue there. So with that being said, I'll kind of wrap up what I had and I'll pass it back over to Gary. But ultimately, guys, thanks for joining. Thanks for spending the time. You guys are still here. We made over 70 people here hanging out 30 minutes after. I love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'll be here again in a month and we'll keep doing this thing again. The recap here, guys, is take advantage of Araknis and OvrC and the features we're giving you to help deploy these things appropriately. Use the tools you guys have at your advantage. And the last thing is take advantage of PCNA. That is an investment in you guys. Obviously, there is a cost around it, but it is a lot of time and effort that our teams put together to make sure that you guys have the knowledge to go out there and be the absolute best installers possible. We're going to keep doing that. We're not stopping at PCNA. That's the first one that you're going to see. We're going to keep rolling those things out there. But we want to partner with you and partner with the industry to increase your knowledge because we know it changes. I mean, geez, I know it changes. All I teach is our product. I struggle to keep up with our products. I can't imagine you guys out there in the field keeping up with everything as well. So take advantage of the stuff we have.
You covered so much. It wasn't just product specific. I mean, this whole network discussion today brought us 90 minutes of, everywhere. That's what you said at the very top too. I mean, hey guys, if you want to watch an awesome session or pass it to the team, when I put out this email on this PM session, that was incredible. I mean, yeah, you're covering the basics, SSID management. But when you went into that like ISP, SEC pass-through thing, that just kind of comes up and it's like, ding, everybody. I thought it was really cool. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Derek, I'm going to take it. I know it's 6:30 on the East Coast. I'm going to wrap all this stuff up. I'll get you the email probably tomorrow, everybody. Please pass it to your team. There's some really valuable stuff on there. Obviously, Derek's contact information. We're going to get him back for an OvrC discussion in 4 weeks anyway. Each and every month, we're definitely going to have Derek on the stool to keep teaching us. But man, if you were to assess this networking conversation today and Araknis, we could do this, I swear to God, each and every month to go along with what you're already doing. I mean, come on, let's look at it this way. The pro stores are are privy to a whole network of dealers. I mean, really, Derek, and we keep kind of pushing them through and educating them. So, you know, wherever you get your information from, guys, please, you got to do so. We're going to keep this right in front of you. If you like this forum, great. I'm glad we've developed this relationship with Derek and his training team for the last few years. He really understands, you know, what you're up against, the Snap dealers alone, but also the newly acquired Snap AV Locals dealer. Derek, I still put in, you know, like 60, 80 new accounts every month through our system, which is the Snap AV Locals. You know, we keep expanding into territories, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, new stores that we talked about earlier, Florida, Texas. So there's always guys coming on board, and this is not going to go away anytime soon. But I really appreciate all your time, guys. I'm going to wrap up a good email for everybody. Please join me as we go again on different products. I got Ring happening next Wednesday. Like I said, look at my commercial focus that I'm doing with QSC and Just Add Power. Derek, we will see you back here for OvrC. And if I had you back for another Araknis, would you use that same deck and just kind of continue it? You know, that's what I'm saying. You know,
yeah, we do something similar. Maybe we look at, you know, let's start doing some open office hours.
You never know. Yeah, actually, Wally is talking about some after hours training. So guys, I'm just going to continue to present it to you guys. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you. Best to you and your family. Dealers out there, stay safe. We are super busy. January is proving to be an awesome month. We got Super Bowl next month, so we're busy, right? You know, there you go. All right, guys, from all of us at Snap AV Locals, that's AllNet, that is Custom Plus, that is Volutone and MRI. We thank you so much, guys. Derek, you're the best. Please tell Shane and your team, thank you again for another great presentation. We'll see you in the next couple of weeks.